Hi, everyone. It's Lindsey Baker with a very special episode of the Action Hour. Tonight, my guest is Craig Downer. Now, Craig is an environmentalist. He is also an ecologist, and he is an author. The big news tonight that we want to talk about and why you came to see us tonight is there actually is going to be a roundup of 400 Onaqui wild horses scheduled to begin July 12th. That's only in a few days. And you guys have a rally, a big protest set. So Craig, tell us what's going on and welcome to the show.
Yeah, this is an outrageous roundup that's being planned by the Utah BLM. And they want to give 90% of the forage to the sheep and cattle out there. And I've been out there several times, was out there recently. These are beautiful horses. Many of them are Spanish Mustang type. And, well, basically, they're trying to clear the decks, I think, for more and more sheep and cattle. And there is a drought, a dryness, but these they need to cut back on the livestock and allow more wild horses there. These are a precious herd. They have very special characteristics, and they're very popular too. Many people come to see them, not only from Utah but from all over the world. So we don't want to see this herd gutted and taken down to such a low level, which it sets back their natural adaptations. And
we're going to get into all of that in a moment. What I want to do, I want to kind of give people a broad picture that are not familiar. We'll get into all of that. We'll unwrap this whole
story. Yeah.
We're having
a rally. Yeah, having a rally.
So can you just give us a little context of where that is? And we saw the baby horse go up to, I believe, his father. Right?
Yeah, that's near the Simpson range there in right in the Onaqui herd management area. It's about 45 miles to the southwest of Salt Lake City. You go on the Interstate 80, and then you go south through Twilley and several other towns, and you connect with the Pony Express Trail, which is a national scenic route, and that heads you to the west, really scenic area, and a lot of vast vistas and mountains and valleys. It's in there, this huge wild horse herd management area. It's run by the Utah BLM. And so we'll be going there after the rally, a lot of us, to see how the horses are doing. Just say we don't want them to be removed.
I have a question for you. So when we look at this picture, we see it looks like a large herd. But from what I'm hearing, from what people have saying, what you've been on your website, etc., you talk about diminishing herds and how you're just talking about how people can come there and see the wild herds, but in reality, you have less and less opportunities to do so. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, when we went out there, we actually saw thousands of domestic sheep that were mowing down so much of the forage, and that's very serious because it is getting drier. So if they're permitted to go out in the best season in the mid to late spring, and kind of mow down all the vegetation, what's going to be left for the poor wild horses and the rest of the wildlife, the deer and the elk, to survive on the rest of the year. So basically, they want to give about 90% of the forage to these domestic animals, and we just think that's not according to the law. The law says land principally devoted to the welfare and benefit of the wild horse and burros, not to ranchers. And there's a lot of off-road vehicle trails, and that's also a big problem. So there's a lot of issues out there.
Also, another issue, tell me if I'm correct, I just did a story, incidentally, on Point Reyes National Park, same exact issue, cattle ranch.
Yeah.
Animal
I posted that about the
elk. Let me ask you this. The wild deer in the area, we saw them. Now, they are very choosy. I don't exactly know the words they use. Like they pick and choose so they don't devastate. And so they work in cooperation. Can you talk about because you're an expert in the ecology. Can you
I've studied
herbivores are totally new to the subject. We need
land eaters. That's right. That's my expertise.
Yeah.
And these wild natural animals are very selective, and they have instincts about how to prune the vegetation without killing it. So it's us people have to learn how to respect these animals. Now, in the case of the horse, it's a deeply rooted native species that evolved and originated in North America. And it's a great balancer of the other animals here. I mean, they all work together, and they've evolved for millions of years together, but people come out with their selfish agendas, and they put too much of one particular type of animal that they want to harvest onto these public lands. And that's just very insensitive. We have to develop a new and better way of life. That's why I'm a great believer in the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burros Act, because it recognized their true place in nature, and it mandated that we set aside certain areas of the public lands where they can be themselves and be thriving natural populations. And I'm a promoter or proponent of the reserve design approach to achieving naturally self-stabilizing populations, but ones that are truly long-term viable populations. And not
and we want to get into this a little deeper with you about the reserve plan. We want you to give us a general story. And you also wrote a white paper, correct, about the benefits. And since you were just talking about the benefits, do you want me to show that, and you could go into that a little bit?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Okay, go ahead.
They contribute so many things that are positive. It makes sense because they co-evolved here for not just thousands, but for millions of years, as did the whole family here in North America and elsewhere too, but especially North America. And consequently, when they return here, many hundreds and even thousands of species of plants and animals respond to them because they remember all the beautiful relationships they had over the millions of years. It's just really a marvelous thing, and they actually enhance ecosystems. So what I say, a lot of this has to do with their digestive system, because they have a different digestive system than the so-called ruminant cloven-hoofed animals like cow, sheep, and deer. These animals, what they call the parasodactyl, which includes the horse family, the rhino family, and the tapir family, have a different digestive system. It's similar, but it's significantly different. And they have what they call a cecal digestion, post-gastric cecal rather than pre-gastric rumen digesting fermentation. They have this, they have the cecum as the main fermentation organ, and they don't as thoroughly digest what they ingest. So consequently, their droppings, which we have a picture of, organically intact, and they take a bit longer to decompose. But that's a good thing, because it actually enriches the humus content of the soil, and also passes a lot of seeds that are intact and that otherwise are killed in the ruminant cow or deer or sheep digestive system. Just in general, they're excellent balance to these ruminants. The ruminants certainly have their place, but you know, the horses and burros, they balance that out.
Not in such big numbers because man is using them for their benefits,
for profit and for maximizing harvest. But it's not in balance with nature, and that's why desertification occurs, where the lands get overgrazed and stripped of their soils, and pretty soon the wind come and it just blows the soil away, and you get a desolate situation. So we want to avoid that. Another thing that the horses do is they can take down drier, coarser vegetation, which is very flammable, or which later becomes very flammable later in the season. And that's a great preventer of catastrophic wildfires, because they reduce the tinder, the dry tinder that lightning strikes, or little sparks from campfires, or even a little spark from an engine or from a horse hoof hitting a rock or something can start a fire, just people playing with matches, you know.
As we see it all over the California wildfires, we're quite familiar.
And then because their droppings restore the soils, makes them richer and more moisture retaining, they also help dampen out fires like from lightning strikes, because the soils are moisture and they're helping to build the water tables, the aquifers. All this is very true. It's just basic ecology. But the thing that amazes me, and I used to work for the BLM, I've worked for the federal government.
Bureau of Land Management. We want to make sure everyone knows.
Yes, I've worked for the Bureau of Land Management. I was also in Colombia working for the Colombian government down in South America, where I learned a lot about the mountain tapirs, and I've done a special study. It has very similar digestive system in ecology and biology as the wild horse. But what I've learned is, of course, is that they're very beneficial, and they have a really special niche. They're ancient presences, long-standing presences in North America, and we should honor their place. And what was so beautiful about the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burros Act is that it honored the horse and burro in its own right, and said, let's let them be themselves in sufficient areas throughout the West, so that they will have a place to truly thrive and be an integral part of the public lands ecosystem. But unfortunately, okay.
Let me just ask you a question to keep it in context for everyone.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows this.
50 years now.
50 years ago, this enactment happened. And from that point, when did it start to degrade into, how did this happen from having this act set up, this national reserve for these horses and burros, and then how did it degrade to the point where it is now? What happened over that time? Give us a little of the background.
Okay, yeah, because I knew Wild Horse Annie, was a young kid, and I worked with her, and that was 1971, December, 11th or 12th, that it was passed unanimously in Congress. And in the early 70s, there was a more wholesome attitude, I would say. There was still a lot of skullduggery against the wild horse and burros, but generally the government was more honest and honorable, and they would stand up to the enemies of the wild horses. But after Carter, when Reagan took over, he kind of sided with the enemies, and ever since then, the wild horse and burros have become an extreme target of people that want to monopolize the public lands, primarily ranchers, and many of whom are extremely wealthy people. Even, I mean, most of those permittees out there are millionaires, and they're incorporated. Some of the wealthiest individuals and corporations in the world hold vast permits on our public lands. And the thing is, if they're so rich and they have so much, why do they begrudge these minor portions of the public lands for the beautiful wild horse and burros. And I want to say this is a general public issue, and it's a quality of life issue for all of us.
And it's happening, Craig, the reason I laughed, it's not a laughing matter.
Yeah.
This feels like a repeat, not that this information is not important and different, but we talked about the same thing. Wealthy cattle ranchers, and we don't want to demonize them, but they need to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's over and over, the same, comes back to the same story. It's infuriating. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. And you know, if they believe in the Bible, there's a verse in the Bible that says, ye are your brother's keeper or your sister's keeper. And that's what I feel our role is, that if we see something that is so terribly wrong, it's our duty as brothers, honorable brothers and sisters, to remind our fellow brother and sister that they're not living in harmony with God's beautiful natural world. And I believe in God. I'm a biologist, but I do believe in God. And I'm more along the lines of John Muir, the old 18th century, 1800s naturalist who had a great love for nature, but he also believed in God, and he was a Christian. So just because you're a scientist doesn't mean you have no spiritual belief or moral values. So I think we have to combine the values, the appreciations that come about through the scientific mindset with a higher consciousness of how we're all related, that all life is one interrelated family. And many of the great religions, even many of the great Christian thinkers or believers like St. Francis of Assisi, believed that. They believed that we're all related and that we can all communicate, and we owe each other respect. So it's not, it's not, and I make the point that, if a person is truly spiritual and religious, then he would not be so materialistic and not want to monopolize all the earth's resources just for a relatively short life,
Religious or non-religious. But let me just cut in here for a moment, because we're almost at a break. I want to make sure everyone finds out that July 2nd about your big event, because it's very
it's going to be a great event. And there's an actress, Katherine Hagel, who's announced.
Yes,
and she'll be there, and there'll be some really fine people there, standing up and trying to stop the roundup of the Onaqui, because it's going to gut this herd and take all these wonderful Spanish, many of them are Spanish type Mustangs that are rare throughout the world. And just in general, they're an inspiration, and they shouldn't be fenced off and have their forage taken almost all away by ranchers. We should provide for a truly genetically viable population and for a truly free roaming lifestyle that's in harmony with nature. And that's my lifetime goal. Since I was a young boy and knew Wild Horse Annie, I grew up on a horse here in Western Nevada and in parts of Eastern California. And it's just part of me. I can't let this go, and I think it's a great part of the solution to the things that need to be corrected here.
We want to just keep reminding people, though, it's July 2nd, Justice for Wild Horses. Now, people want to attend. There is, I saw something about some free ride or something like that. Can you clarify?
Yeah, there's
By the way, I want to shout out, before you do, shout out to Sky Valencia, who set up our interview, St. Martin's Animal Foundation. And I want to show her this graphic sheet she sent me, which is amazing. So, and I want you to explain all about that in a moment, but let me just get this. Nice. Yeah, isn't this beautiful, this graphic?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so tell us how people can participate and so forth. If they are Yeah.
Yeah, you can contact Sky Valencia at loving LOVINGSGI at iCloud.com. That's one way. And I don't know if she wants me to give out her phone number, but
No, I don't think we should do the phone number.
oh, okay.
But that's LOV, loving,
Yeah,
SGI.
yeah, LOVINGSGI at iCloud.com. And she'll tell you all the details. And there are buses going from Las Vegas, I know, that will take people up there. And there is possibility also for hotel
Wonderful.
accommodation on the 1st. You have to leave on Thursday, July the 1st.
Which is this Thursday.
Yeah, and so that day after tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to meeting all those people. I'm coming from kind of northern Nevada here, not far from Carson City, so I can't, it wouldn't make sense for me to go to Las Vegas. But we're going to have a great time and really have.
That ride is going to be a fun ride. It's going to be a joy ride.
Yeah, it really is, and we're gonna really make waves here and stand up and say, look, it's 50 years since this law has been in effect, and we've got to restore its true intent along with the herds and their habitat, so it's not just a subverted law, but a law that's truly been honored along with these wonderful animals. And we want to call for a moratorium on the roundups. And I'm part of a study now, and I want to also make a shout out to the Heber herd that should be down in Arizona in the Apache Sitgraves National Forest. It should become a study area, and the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, has the right to declare that a study area, because that's another one that's under the gun and slated. They're planning to remove practically all those horses and give all the forage to the ranchers. We can't let that happen. And ISPMB is also really behind that, Wild Horse Annie's original organization. So if you want to learn more about that, I can tell you more about that as well.
Let's hang on to that for a moment. Hold that thought. We have another important announcement that's very timely, needs to be done tomorrow. So let's get that out there too. So can you talk about this, supporting AGR5?
Yeah, that's a great resolution before the state legislature there in Sacramento, California. And I urge you to call, because the vote's coming right up, and you can call 916-319-2096. It's calling for a roundup on these wild horses and burros. Unfortunately, under the last Congress, they approved a terrible plan called a Path Forward, which is actually a terribly backward and anti-wild horse and burro plan that is kind of like a pipe dream of the wild horse and burro enemies. And we've got to put our foot down and say, look, this is totally absurd. It's malicious, and we have to stop it. So this Assembly Joint Resolution 5 would send a strong message from California to the government that we want a moratorium on these roundups, because these plans are wipeout plans. And they're nothing like the true meaning and intent, the soul and heart of the wonderful Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burros Act of 1971. So okay, you call the Assembly Water, Parks and Wildlife Committee, and the number is right there.
Yeah, and I made while you were chatting. I made this, but I want to get rid of the ticker on it so people can read it. Can you see that? Stop the roundups. Call that number, 916. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's
so there's that number, folks. And you can do that tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. And tomorrow I'm testifying. By the way, I'm testifying before the National Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Board. And that'll be at 10:45. People can live stream it on the BLM.gov. There'll be a lot of people complaining about this path forward. And I've done articles and denouncements of this, and one of these has got a lot of attention.
Horse talk. I think I have that.
Yeah, I think I sent it, and I did a recent article at the beginning of the year too, where I just denounced it, and I said, look, we've really got to change things. And also the local Nevada paper here also printed the shorter version, which got a lot of
story as well, correct?
Yeah, that's the one that had that beautiful stallion there from the Northern Pine Nuts. But I've probably visited over 70 of the wild horse and burro herds in the Western United States. I've also been up into Canada and down elsewhere, and I just think that these are such magnificent presences, and they've done so much for us. We wouldn't be where we were without them. And the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burros Act was just such a noble act. It was like a quantum leap for mankind to do something this benign, this unselfish, and this far-seeing, that shows an in-depth appreciation. So I just urge everyone to really take a real interest and to get to know the herds wherever you can, and become familiar with the individuals, and then become their defender, become involved with the BLM or the Forest Service offices so that you become their defender. And if you give input into the government plans, they usually call them environmental assessments, and get on their list, that gives you standing to sue. And that's why I can be a plaintiff in a lot of these cases. And I just submitted, by the way, a declaration to stop this Onaqui Roundup today. But I've done this for many others, and you can do the same, And
that's wonderful that you can empower people.
And you do win. The judges occasionally, and they're getting more and more interested in this issue, because they really know it is. We have to pay attention to nature and to quality of life. It's not just about immediate, profits and indulgences. It's about harmony with nature and living in harmony and respecting these magnificent, highly evolved beings, the horses. So
let's see what our comments are from some of our people that are looking forward to you, Craig. And she says she's heading over there, Elena. That's so exciting, Elena. So Craig,
yeah, thank you, Elena. That's wonderful. Me too.
And then this says the number on the ticker should say, thank you. So they picked up the number. We'll fix that. Thank you.
Oh, it's 916-319-2096. Okay.
That's when you type when you're talking. Okay, let's see what else we got here, Craig. BLM is enough. These horses are part of our history. Helicopters running newborn foals until they break. Oh, wow. Those soft, precious hoofs. We want horses on the land, not sheep and cattle. So, of course, the sheep and cattle, Craig, are there for commerce, right?
Well, that's right. Now, the thing is they always talk about multiple use. Like the land manager will say, well, Craig, we have to abide by the multiple use concept of the public lands. And I say, well, that means you should have fairer numbers of the wild horses, because if you keep squeezing them out, even of their 12% that they should have on the Western public lands, and allowing the big ranchers or the miners or the energy frackers to monopolize, then that's not multiple use, that's monopolistic use. Yeah. And what you're saying is 180 from the true intent. And you have to listen to the general public that is really craves these natural places and these beautiful, spirited, naturally living horses and these wise, intriguing burros that are just enchanting, and they uplift people. A lot of people, even if they say they have a disability and they can't come here, they just they know that they're there, and that does an amazing thing for their life, because they say, okay, it's not all about greed and plunder and short-term advantage. there's actually something decent going on in our world. So we've really got to stand up for this law and get it back on track, because right now...
This is Tina Wooten, and I'm sharing a video I did of the beautiful Onaqui wild horses in their natural habitat. This is the Onaqui Mountains HMA, videotaped May of 2021. And as you can observe, the deep ravines are death traps for our wild horses when driven by loud, noisy helicopters at the BLM roundups. Wild horses tend to plunge headlong into these deep ravines, and often they stumble, break their legs and necks. They die a gruesome death. Particularly at risk are the elderly, the foals, the colts, and the fillies. They are at risk of suffering injury and death. There is over 200,000 acres on the Onaqui's HMA, which is more than enough, but the BLM wants to give it away to the sheep and the cattle. We must restore our wild horses for this.
All right, I just want to remind our viewers that if you're just tuning in, this is Lindsey Baker on a special edition of the Action Hour. I'm here with Craig Downer, who is an ecologist and author, and we're going to get into your book and your website and a lot more in just a minute. But what we're asking people to do is to make a phone call to this number. There is a deadline to stop the roundup of these horses, the Onaqui Horses in Salt Lake City, and there's a rally coming up in 2 days, and it's so exciting. Craig, we're going to continue talking about this.
Yeah, I would call the BLM or email them. And tomorrow there's going to be the National Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Board meeting. They should hear, and I'll be testifying rather. And just in general, go on blm.gov and it'll tell you the exact route and the numbers to call and everything for the Utah State Office and for the Onaqui district that has the Onaqui wild horses there.
Yes, you actually did have, and we will provide, one thing I did want to add is that we will be providing links in the comments for people in order to find these specific spots. I think if you could put in the chat for me, I can put it in the comments. You had given me for BLM's website the specific page about the horses and the horse, all of the conservation related to it and what they're doing.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just blm.gov, and you go on the Wild Horse and Burro program, and then you choose the state of Utah, and all the contacts are right there. So it's very simple, actually. Actually, if you just Google Onaqui, ONAQUI, there'll be the Save the Onaqui group will come up, and all these groups. Friends of Animals has a legal case now, which I am helping with, and the Cloud Foundation and AWHC and all those organizations, the ISPMB, there's just Animal Welfare Institute, and there are just many different ones that are focusing on this. That's why this is going to be really big, and I think we're going to stop.
Yes,
we're going to be able to stop this roundup. And I'm hoping, that it'll happen one way or the other. But I'm very confident that it can be stopped because it's very flagrant and it's extremely unjust. And
I want to talk about one other thing here that I'm seeing in this picture. We didn't mention oil drilling or oil, some sort of to do with oil wells. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, there are many herd management areas that are being overtaken by mining companies and by oil and gas companies. They're going in and establishing drilling platforms, and there's a lot of fracking in these areas. And we had a rally back in the last part of let's see, March 29th in front of the BLM national headquarters in Grand Junction, Colorado. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, we went out, a few of us went out to see the little book cliffs and also the Pissance and East Douglas herd management areas, and also the Sandwash Basin herd management area. And what we discovered was in that, especially in that Pissance East Douglas, going north from Grand Junction, and in the Sandwash Basin, it's being taken over by these giant natural gas drilling platforms and fracking operation. And that's why they're slating, as long with the livestock, they're slating it because of those activities for extreme reduction of the horses. So we can't allow these animals to just be unfairly targeted by really extremely greedy and selfish kind of money worshiping interests that have lost their moral compass. It's just not, in no way is it right. And even if they go to church, they ought to think a lot more carefully about a lot of the verses that really promote a reverence for life, and as do so many of the earth's humanity's religion, whether it's Hindu or Buddhist or Jainism. They encourage the truly religious people,
or non-religious
have reverence for life, like John Muir, the early late 1800s. He was such a wonderful man, very devoutly spiritual man. And but I could read you a little bit about this, about what's happening in the Onaqui, if you'd like me to. It's on
not too long, because people tend to drift off, so we got to keep it going.
Okay, let me read a little bit about this Onaqui.
Just a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. It says, originally there were 507 over 7,000 acres, or 793 square miles. But then they reduced them down to 240,000 and some odd acres. So they cut it way down by 267,500 acres. So you'd think that if they already took away that many and said they were not going to manage for wild horses here, that in what remains, they would give the principal resources to the wild horses, because Section 2C of the Act says land devoted principally to the welfare and benefit of the wild horse and burro. So it was meant, but no, they end up giving around 90% of the forage to the sheep and cattle in those remaining areas. And they already got that from all the zeroed out areas. So you're saying that they're going beyond the 90? They're even going... Yeah, flagrantly wrong here. And then they assigned a appropriate management level for the population numbers to be 121 low to 210 high for about 165 wild horses, which is kind of ridiculous, because it means that there'll be 1,232 original herd area acres, or 583 herd management area acres for every individual wild horse. And basically, it's an extremely sparse population. It's an underpopulated area. But they think people don't have a grasp of numbers or can't think through things, and that they can just come on and say, hey, they're overpopulated. We got to get rid of them. Destroy everything. And I just, it's a big trick. And for our nation, it's an immoral act, because it's like another broken treaty. Like we did with the Indians. We made some beautiful treaties with those Native Americans, but then we broke them whenever there was profit or gold, or the settlers wanted to occupy their land. They just blatantly broke their treaties. The difference now, Craig, is it's going to come home to haunt us, because all of this affects the environment which we need to live. We need to survive. We are
killing ourselves when we do
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Now, one of the practical recommendations, I repeat, is that many of these public lands have wonderful products, natural products that the Native Americans used for thousands of years, and that would give a much greater abundance of food and services to humanity, rather than these cattle and sheep, which are just maintaining kind of a glorified Hollywood lifestyle, but they're destroying the earth, and life on this planet is now in danger because of global warming and because of the rampant
Animal
destruction
agriculture is the
and the destruction. I mean, humanity has to learn to put the brakes on itself.
Yes.
Or we're going to leave a sterile planet here. Now, I wanted to say that the pinyon nuts from the pinyon pine were a staple for the Paiute and many, the Shoshone and the Washoe and many of the tribes here that I grew up with here as a native Nevadan. And I learned from them. My mother taught them in the schools, and they showed us how to gather these nuts. Another one is the juniper berry.
Now, when you say that, how did they use them?
But are you aware that the BLM and the Forest Service are in the process of eliminating many of the pinyon juniper forests in order to create more grassland forage for cattle and sheep? And I think that's just outrageous. That's just outrageous.
It's a social issue as well. Yeah. It's an animal rights issue. It's an ecological and environmental issue. It's hitting us from all ends, and it needs to stop. Let's watch one more movie. Hang on.
She did a nice job. That's really nice.
Who did that video?
That was Tina Wooten.
Tina?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I came up with the number to call that you got to put on the screen for the people to call about the rally.
Okay, great.
It's Ty's number. And
is it okay with her to put her number on the screen?
Well,
I don't know if we want to do it. Not comfortable. Well, put it up later.
If we want people to go to the rally, I think I don't think there'd be a problem, really. So it's 747-230-2169, because she is one of the main coordinators.
Yeah, I understand that. And what I can do is either, if she's watching, she can let us know by getting on the comments, or someone can call her, or I will put it up. I'll call her right after and put it up in the comments after. I don't want to type someone's number in if they
okay. Yeah, I just said the main thing here is about the rally, so I wanted to get that number up. That's why I went away and got my little address book where I had it written down.
Well, I don't know that she's giving it out freely, though, to put on
the
internet. That's a very,
Well, most people that can Google, I think they'll find this pretty easily, though, if they just go on about the Wild Horse and BURRO Freedom Rally, and then the numbers will be there.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. Let's keep it like that for now, and we'll call her and put it in right away afterwards too, because this gets seen later. It's not only for the broadcast.
Oh, okay, good.
And by the way, that reminds me to ask everyone to please share out this video. Please help us get this out. You can see that we're down to the last minutes here. Literally, this action that we have on the screen right now has to be taken by tomorrow, and the rally is in 3 days. So if what you can do as a viewer, if you're brokenhearted by what's going on, if you see how evil this is, it's not evil. The people, the individuals are evil, but they're not thinking clearly. They're seeing the dollar as Craig was saying, seeing as the main motivation, and it's destroying our planet. And we have
a lot of it is resistance to change. There's people get too rutted in blind traditions in ways of life, in their appetites, and their kind of like immediate gratifications. And so it's trying to get people to think logically and to have some compassion and concern for all of life. Because, us humans will not survive without what I call the great rest of life that took millions of years to evolve here. And, and to me, you can't get much more immoral than just to trash this beautiful life community for
Right.
a relatively few years of materialistic indulgence and conceited patting yourself on the back.
Craig, we got to move forward. We've got like 10 minutes
right.
left. There's some things that are really important. If you want to talk about your book, we want to get that out for you, and we want to get your website out there. So let's jump on that. So if they want to get in touch with you, they can go to the wildhorseconspiracy.org. Let me just take them to this page.
Yeah,
here.
it's the Wild Horse Conspiracy with a V in front of it. Yeah, that's the thing. This is my book. This is the book, and it has this freedom. Freedom is on. And my first book was called Wild Horse: Living Symbols of Freedom, and Wild Horse Annie wrote the foreword for that. And recently I have a little booklet out. It's 60 pages. It has a lot of new discoveries.
Yes.
Like how the horse and burros dig wells, and it helps all kinds of plants and animals.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I also have a musical CD. I play the piano and I have melodies that come to me. It's called Wild Horse Rhapsody. But yeah, they can get all these things on my website, and I have that GoFundMe called Reserve Design.
Yes,
which is the true implementation of the act, the Wild Horse and Burro Act, which would respect their nature and allow them to fill their niche and have natural barriers and buffer zones and get the communities to collaborate. And then you would have, once they fill their niche and they know their limits and they establish their mature social bands, they would naturally self-stabilize. And that's one of the first things I learned as a university student at Cal Berkeley, is that these are climax species. They're not species that totally overrun and destroy their habitats like their enemies like to say. And now one proof of that is the fact that there was about 8 million wild horses in North America around 1800. And they weren't destroying everything. They were living in great harmony with the buffalo and the deer and the elk and the bear and the grizzly and the wolf. So when they say that, the horses don't belong in nature, they're only meant to be a domesticated horse, that is so blind. And the very fact that they revert and can survive proves that they're much more natural than they are man-made. It's just a very conceited thing to say that they don't belong in nature. I mean, you can't get much more arrogant than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I want to show this. Isn't that coming up now? Yeah, I want to show your reserve design, and you could talk about it for 3 minutes because we got to cover.
Yeah. It's the natural, respectful way which obeys the Wild Horse and Burro Act, which says minimum feasible interference. Don't go alter their reproductive system or skew their sex ratio or basically domesticate them. It said no, use natural means that respect the true nature of these beautiful animals who are deeply rooted here in North America and are restoring soils and balance and interrelationships. And I presented this time and time again to the authorities, and I'm not going away on this, even if I'm the last individual. I know it's right and it's my calling. And I go around and I do studies and I present this. I present it to the BLM, to the Forest Service, to the public. If you go on the wildhorseconspiracy.org, you'll see the many studies I've done, even up into the Rocky foothills of the Rockies in Canada. I've been down south of the border. I've been all over there. I've been to Australia, and I've been all over the place, wherever the wild horse and burros are.
We didn't talk about the dust storms. Just take a minute.
Yeah, no, the dust is really bad, and those fine particulates, less than 2.5 microns, they can really mess a person up or an animal, or even clog the stomata or the pores of plants. And out there in the Onaqui, there's a terrible dust problem. And I was answering the BLM manager's refutation of my points on this case, and he was trying to make light of the dust. He said, well, why are you in your car driving around? I thought that seemed kind of like an immature response, because the dust is a bad problem out there. And many people were really complaining about it, and they had to, wear wet scarves over their mouth. And what does it do to all the horses have huge lungs. Right. They run.
It shows a blatant disregard for the taxpayer's opinion, in my opinion. And aren't we the ones that have the right to drive?
Yeah, and that's another thing, is they're ignoring a lot of the problems with off-highway vehicles. In practically all of these herd areas, you have a lot of people going out with these vehicles, Jeeps or quads, and they're ripping up the land and causing terrible devastation. But you don't see the managers going after them. But if there's a handful of wild horse or burros, they will go after them to try and blame them for what's wrong. And that's wrong. That makes them wrong. So there's just a new way. And it's not like I'm trying to be a nasty guy. But if I see something that's wrong, and I really do have a wonderful appreciation for the horses, and always I had a great belief in their right to be free. All animals. I was kind of born that way, and I gave some speeches here in high school in Western Nevada, and they kind of say, hey, wow, this Craig, where's he coming from? And that's when some of the people used to say, well, Craig might be a reincarnated Indian, because he seemed really identified with the natural world. He wants to treat it respectfully and live with it. I gave a speech about why I thought fences did not belong, fences that fence in animals. I believe that all animals should have a natural, free lifestyle, and I still do. So I guess I never grew up.
We'll never grow up, Craig. You're a delight. And we're narrowing down to the last few minutes. We do want to repeat to people that there is going to be a huge protest rally in Salt Lake City, Utah. Let's play that banner for a moment. And here we go. Call to action to all wild horse and burro advocates, which is everyone watching, and many, many more people. Join in if you can. The Wild Horse and Burro Freedom Rally, a protest in Salt Lake City, Utah on Friday, July 2nd. Couple days away. This Friday, 10 o'clock. Yeah. Come at 8:30 if you're a volunteer. So those volunteers that will see this, let's share out, everyone. And people that are going to the rally, you lovely people, please share this out. What you do will be so much more exponentially effective by doing that one little thing. It's amazing you do it in 2 seconds. Hey guys, guess where I'm going? Check out this video about it. And if they can't make it, they're going to get the information and maybe take some of the actions, or all of the actions, we would hope. So
yeah, that's great. No, it's going to be really big. There could be movie stars and singers.
Who's going to be there? Tell us the movie stars.
Yeah, and even a wildlife ecologist, at least one. And I
That's
think
you,
there's others too, photographers too. Tina will be there. Tina Wooten that took a lot of these pictures.
Yes, let's give a shout out to Tina. And she did all the little videos we showed, and I showed the same one twice. I hope no one noticed. So I think why. I think I picked up the same one twice. It was worth seeing at the third time.
Yeah, didn't she do a great job with all that fairy dust or angel dust in there? Yeah.
Yeah. That baby going
and then a lot of us after the rally are going out to Onaqui to observe and even camp for a few days. Hopefully it's not too hot out there, but there's some beautiful mountains, so you can always go up a little ways into the mountains and get a breeze.
So many beautiful comments tonight, and for not being an off hour of coming on. I'm so happy to see so many people on. A lot of people are very into this issue. So please take action. I know some of you, like myself, I would love to be there. I won't be able to make it, but I'm going to do everything I can from this place I'm at right now to help these people, give them that push. Be the cheerleader, be the supporter, be the one that makes the phone call. It's so easy. In fact, you can do it right now because you'll get their machine, but it still counts. So you can call now. And sometimes I'm a little shy, like your first call ever, you might be a little shy. So call now. You'll get the machine, but it still is effective. Anyway, folks, share this out. It's really important. We've got to stop this. They're going to gather them up. And then what happens to them, Craig, when they gather them up? Do they shoot?
Well, they go into these holding facilities. And from there on, it's kind of mysterious because they try to adopt them. But since only a relatively few get adopted, many of those, they say they go into the long-term holding facilities. But that's not well monitored. And there's a lot of reports that actually a lot of those horses are ended up going to slaughter. And another thing, even the ones that adopt them, and lately they've been given $1,000 for anyone who will adopt them, but they get title after 1 year, and then they can sell them on the open market to anybody, including a kill buyer. So it's a very serious problem, you know, and we've got to get on top of it. And I think people should call their senators and their congressmen, and particularly in the natural resources, and say that we can't continue with this path forward because it's a wipeout plan, and it's annihilating the wild horse and burros, and it's a very crafty, deceitful plan, and we've got to stand up and oppose it and say this is not moral, it's not according to the law, and it's undoing all these wholesome things that can help people. Now, the switchboard for the Congress is 202-224-3121.
Say that again.
202-224-3121.
And this Congress?
Yeah, the Congress of the United States. So that'll get you to any senator or representative. And I recommend that people call both their senators and their representative and complain and just say, what's happening to the wild horse and burros has to be stopped. And we're asking for a roundup. There has to be an independent evaluation of what's going on. And we have to stop this plundering of our natural, our national public lands, and particularly of the wild horse and burros, because they're being extremely victimized, and it's extremely wrong.
Greg, our time is up. Believe it or not, it's 6 o'clock. Please stay on. Okay. I'm going to say goodbye to our audience.
Okay.
Thank you for watching. This is a really serious matter, and I'm going to ask Craig to come back on after the rally. We'll have him back on in a couple of weeks. He can tell us, update us what's going on. And folks, thanks for watching. We're counting on you to take action here and help these wonderful horses and barrels. We have to save them. Good night. We love you.
Okay. Night.
Bye.
Bye.